Hi, the first chapter we're going to talk about is computer security fundamentals. So I just want to point out to you that the book we're using is by Chuck Easton and it's called Computer Security Fundamentals. We will be looking at that book. We will go through every chapter in this book. Make sure you get the third edition because computer security changes rapidly, so we want the most recent edition. So the objectives are to talk about what are the top threats to computer networks, how likely is it that you'll experience some type of a hack, what are some of the key terms, what are some of the parts of the network that we need to be concerned about, and looking at some resources. So let's begin. We all use computer systems. We probably are signed on through our phone carrier network. When we come into this building, we use the Marymount network to be able to access the internet. At home, you might have a wireless. You go to the library, there'll be a wireless. You may do your banking online. You may be a big Amazon user. You might watch Netflix or some Amazon Prime. We're going to have some classes that we're going to do online. The amount of online activity that we have in our day-to-day life is astronomical. Who is the first source that you go to when you have a question? Dr. Google. So online is critical in terms of what we have become accustomed to with for information. So one of the key things that people are now becoming interested in is personal information. We use our credit cards. You might belong to several social media, have social media accounts. They could be as simple as a Facebook or a LinkedIn. They could be a more complicated type of account. How is that information being protected? Do you know, for example, that when you sign up for a Google account, all your information, you are allowing Google to have access to your information? Google reads every single one of your emails. Not in the detailed sense, but it does a scan to look for things. So what are vulnerabilities and what secures these systems? So how seriously should you take threats to network security and to your own personal security online? Has anybody ever had their identity stolen? Do you know what that entails? Somebody taking your driver's license number, possibly your social security number, your passport number. For example, my passport is somebody in another country has the exact same passport number as I do. So every time I go through any type of immigration, my passport number is flagged. Now, luckily, whoever has my passport number from another country, I don't know, they won't tell me, isn't a bad guy or bad gal. But if it was, I would have real problems every single time I traveled. So that's just a number that's being captured to represent my idea. But is somebody looking after, who's looking after your computer to make sure that your information isn't being taken? For example, your credit card information, possibly your student record information, possibly your credit score. So there's several, there's a scale of where you might fall, that no one is going to do anything to, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, I have to do something immediately, or middle ground, So how serious should you be with network security? Okay, so what are the types of threats we know? So how many of people have gotten an email from asking for money that's called the Nigerian email? There's all types of threats that people have to be aware about. There's malware, so what do we put? We put security on our computers, right? You would never have a computer without having some type of security. Now, people believe that because they have an Apple, they are more secure than if they have an Android or a Windows. And that's true to some extent only because the volume of people with Androids and or Windows is greater worldwide than Apple. But we should never be so naive to think that those other operating systems won't be vulnerable. Security breaches. We have security breaches in the US all the time where somebody will go into databases of names, people's names, their social security, maybe their health records. They will download all of this information, and what they will do is they will sell this information on the black market. It could be just identifying information so other people can get fake social security cards in our country, or it could be information with credit card information. Denial of service attacks. These are things that happen to networks. And we're going to talk more about networks later, but this is when people are trying to illegally, unauthorized, break into a network. So these are DOS, and there's several different types, and we will get to know those in great detail. Web attacks, session hijacking. Session hijacking is an example of somebody coming while you're typing and actually being able to get into the session that maybe it's with your banking provider, and you're transferring money, and they're able to get into that session, and they're able to circumvent where that money goes. DNS poisoning was when you have URLs that are not legitimate, and insider threats, which is a big area also referred to as social engineering. So what's malware? So I'm sure most of you know this, and we're going to get into more detail on this. There are viruses, there's Trojan horses, there's spyware, and there's logic bombs. And each of these types have very different purposes. So example, a virus is something that replicates itself on a computer. A Trojan horse is a program that that might be something where you download an executable, for example, some little program, and in that program is another program that is going to cause it could cause problems to the operating system, but it's another program that will do some kind of harm. Spyware, we have it all the time. Sometimes it's adware, but spyware is when we load information onto our computer. It could be by going onto some site. It could be that we've loaded some type of virus that we don't even know, a benign virus, but it's really a spyware type of virus, that it's looking at where you're searching. So for example, how many people have been on Amazon? And as you're on Amazon and you're looking for kitchen utensils, for example, you're looking for a new blender, and all of a sudden you see on the side, you're done looking for new blenders and you're looking now at rugs, and on the side of your computer are all these different blenders. It's because spyware has captured that last search you did, and now it has sold that to people who are advertisers so that they will bring their products back to your screen. A logic bomb is something that is set that at a certain period of time, under a certain condition, it will do some type of harm. So these are types of malware, and we will get into these more. One of the most common types, of course, is the virus, usually spread through email. We've all gotten one. Often what it does is it just collects everybody's contacts. It'll send an email to all of your contacts. Sometimes it's just something simple and it's just uses system resources and slows systems down. Sometimes it carries some kind of malicious type of bug. Sometimes it just captures all of your contacts for whoever the person it was intended to use something with later. Okay, so we kind of talked about the Trojan horse a bit. It's named after the wooden horse of ancient history. If you remember the Greeks, where they got into in the Odyssey and the Iliad, where they were able to hide in this big giant wood horse, and when somebody came, they let the horse in, thinking, "Oh, this is this wonderful," and next thing you know, in came the army. And here, spyware is probably the most rapid time, like we just talked about before. And like I talked about before, you can get it through cookies as a very popular way to get it, but also through this keylogger, which is a type of software that you might get it through some free. You might go to some free software, or you're downloading a report, and in it is a keylogger, and that keylogger is a system where it records all of your keystrokes as you're recording. And it puts them in a little file, and then at some later date, it will send them to whoever was the initiator of the keylogger. This is real, and this happens. Okay, we talked about a logic bomb. So We have compromising system security, intrusion attacks that break through the system. We have hackers, crackers, social engineering, and war driving. So let's just get to it. You know, um, each of those have different purposes, but all of them have one thing in common. They are trying to do something bad. A denial of a service, the attacker doesn't intrude into the system, but just blocks access to other authorized users. Web attacks, the attacker tries to breach a web, and there's many things that can happen, and one of those things is like a SQL injection or cross-site scripting. We'll talk about that more later, where they actually if you don't code your websites tightly in HTML, and HTML is a language like any programming language where you can identify, you have to follow the syntax, but it will work if not all the syntax is proper. And what can happen though is sophisticated attackers can find where there might be like holes in the code. And sometimes there's intentional holes in the code because it's meant to allow other software to integrate with it. It's very common. Windows is a perfect example. Because Windows integrates with lots of other products, there are specified holes or gateways within the code where you can link or interject other code. This is also a place where somebody can interject a SQL script that would do some harm. It could cause damages to your operating system. It could just be downloading a keylogger. It might be just accessing all your contacts. It might be looking for credit card information. So these are types of web attacks that you need to be concerned about. And session hijacking, like I said, is fairly complex. It's like, for example, you're online with your bank, you're going to do some kind of a transaction, and somebody is able to, especially if it's an unsecured network, they're able to join in your session and extract that information. So when you're at Starbucks next time and you think you're going to do your banking, think again. Okay. And then DNS poisoning involves actually causing people. So instead of going to Bank of America, BANK of America, somebody sets up a bogus site called Bank, BANC of America.com. You don't even know it. They're up, they're down. They route you to different places. So if you are on a site and it says click here to get more information, make sure it's a legitimate site. Otherwise, it could be taking you to a malicious website where it'll get information. One popular thing that people will do is it says you might be interested, for example, in something with nature. And it might be a fake nature site. And it says, if you want more information about these types of plants or whatever, sign up for my newsletter. And what you do is you sign up for this newsletter. You've just given access of all of this information, your email, your name, whatever information they asked, and you've just given that to somebody who isn't a valid person. This is where the start of collecting your personal information and selling it can happen. Okay, so what is the likelihood of an attack? Pretty high. I'm sure most of you have had some kind of phishing email asking you, like it's from a friend. I mean, a popular one is, hey, look at this photo, and it's from one of your friends, and it's just a link. How do you know it's really from your friend? How do you know that it wasn't something that somebody, their site or their email got hacked, and it's actually taking all the contacts and sending an email with a link saying, look at this photo, click on the link, and then giving all of you a virus? How do you know? Okay, so these are some of the things: unauthorized use of systems through DOS, intrusions, and employee misuse. And I will talk about many examples of employee misuse as we move forward in the class. Okay, so people that we need to know. We have hackers, of which we have three types: white hats, black hats, and gray hats. White hats are people who they actually are hired to be able to find weaknesses within systems. Black hats are people who are responsible they're actually the bad guys. They're trying to get into systems. And gray hats are people who are quasi. They try, they have the skills of a black hat person, but they don't necessarily do bad things. So there's all these different types of hackers that we're going to talk about in greater detail as we move forward. The next thing is devices. We have firewalls, we have proxy servers, and we have intrusion detection. So every network has some type of a firewall, and that's actually this outer perimeter that protects your network. And within that firewall, large organizations would have something called a proxy server, which disguises the IP address of internal people so that when you go out to the web, they can't find your actual IP address. Okay, and then we have these systems that are looking for unusual behavior to be able to determine whether somebody is trying to hack into a system or not. Okay, and what are the things we do to try to protect our web? One of them is authentication. Passwords is one way we do that. RSA tokens is another way, and then auditing who's getting in. So how will you protect your network? A layered approach is usually the best way, where we have many different layers. We have privileges. We only give people the need to know. You only need to know what you need to know to do your job. Security, we protect from the outside. We protect people from the inside. And then these are just a list of some of the network security laws that we will talk about in greater detail. So in summary, network security is constantly changing. You need 3 levels of knowledge. To take the course to learn, you need basics. You'll learn about enterprise systems, and then you'll learn the ever-changing world of exploits and threats. Thank you so very much, and we'll look forward to moving forward with other things.